Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. It's on hurricane preparedness, and hurricane season is June 1st. It's right around the corner. We got a bunch of new names for this year. We're starting out with Arthur. We got Bertha, Crystal, Dolly, Edward, Faye, Gonzalo, Hannah, Isaiah, Josephine, Kylie, Leah, Marco, Nana, Omar, Paulette, Renee, Sally, Teddy, Vicky, and Wilfred. So some of these are repeated from years past, but I hope they're not repeated with disaster. Anyway, I am Peggy West. I'm your organizer for today, and we have a great crowd on today with several sponsors, which I'm going to introduce here shortly. First, I just want to do some housekeeping comments to let you know that please put your questions into the Q&A. We do not record the chat box, but we do record the Q&A. And if at the end of the webinar with the panel questions and so on, if we don't have time, Jordan, our speaker today, can answer your questions via email. So please use the Q&A. Past that, CAMS, this is a CEU credit. So we will be sending out the credits following the class, but please allow 2 to 3 weeks for the posting to get done. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow or by Friday. It's not going to happen by the end of next week. So just give them a little time to make a posting, because today we have over 258 people in attendance or registered. So thank you for joining us. I want to thank our sponsors. And by that time, I want to introduce our first sponsor for today, Vinteum Software. We have on today the team. Laura is on from Vinteum. She is the national sales rep, but I want to say thank you to the wind beneath my wings, Julia, if you'll give a quick wave, and Fabricio. Thank you so much, guys, for all you do. So Laura, tell us what you do, and I hear you have something new.
Yes, thank you very much, Peggy. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura. I'm the sales executive here at Vinteum. So at Vinteum, we provide software and tools for community management. Our main tool is Neighbors, which will give you either as a property manager, as a cooperative, as an HOA, or as a condominium, a website and a residence portal where you can, manage your whole community and also be compliant to the Florida law. Now, the news that we have today are really, really good. We just launched a new free version of Neighbors. So with that, you would have access to have a website, a place where to store your documents, where you can send notice, where you can, keep communication with your residents completely for free. There will obviously be some limitations in it, but it's just a way for you to start out with your community, with being compliant, with get to know how great of a product we have to offer you. And for those of you who would still like to maybe go for the version that will give you access to everything, we will make sure to train you all. We will actually build the website for you as well as the portal. We provide ongoing support, and we'll be sending all the information here through the chat so you guys can get in touch with us if you are interested in getting to know about the free version, which is Neighbors Lite. You guys are more than welcome to reply to that, and I'll be super happy to speak to any of you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Great. And I'm really excited to hear this, that you're really trying to help all these communities in Florida. We have like 28,000 associations throughout the state. So that is an awesome feature. Again, please put your questions into the Q&A, everybody. I'm seeing chat coming in with some questions. Next, I want to introduce United Professional Engineering. We have Siobhan Gonzalez on today. Siobhan, tell us about yourself and what's going on over there at UPE. Are you muted, Siobhan?
There you go. Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Siobhan Gonzalez. I am the Business Development Manager here at United Professional Engineering. We are a full-service structural engineering firm. We've been serving South Florida condos for over 20 years. We do all things concrete restoration projects, phase one, phase two, milestone projects, building recertifications. We're seeing a lot of roof projects right now. It is rainy season, so if you have a question or you're unsure, we do all things to support our condominiums. I will say right now, one of the most popular and favorite services that we are offering amongst board members and property managers is our complimentary proposal consultation. So whether you're planning, for next year or you have upcoming projects that you want to get in before the end of the year, we're here to help. Feel free to reach out to me directly and enjoy today's webinar.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And please thank Carmelo. Let me go on now down to APB Security. We have Tom Acosta on today. Tom, tell us about your company and what you do.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. Glad that you've taken a little bit of time off your busy schedule to talk to us. I'm Tom Acosta, APB Security. I've been with the company for over 10 years, and we're a boutique type of security company that customize everything to your needs. We just don't use general terms. We just basically make sure that everything fits the proper way. We do arm and unarmed security. We do gatehouses. We do all types of venues, hospitals, schools, you name it. HOAs is a big thing for us, as well as hotels and so on. We do patrols and we do gate check-in. We even do weddings a lot of times. So we've been here for over 25 years, and we cover the whole Tri-County area. That's basically our bread and butter. We're based out of Jupiter, and we have offices in Pompano too. Please feel free. There's a lot of changes going on. Security is very, very important, as you well know, because of the news and you see everything around you. Security is a very, very key factor for you. So it's good that you become one with security as you work through your HOAs. Please don't hesitate to give me a call. My name is Tom, and it's APB, American Protection Bureau. Have a nice day.
Okay, Tom, thank you so much. And Tom didn't mention it, but if you have any construction projects going on, you definitely want to consider APB because they have these guards with the carts going around, the cars, and on-site security, and they can provide you 24/7 until your project is completed. So good luck with that, Tom. Next, I want to introduce Dalia Anise. She is the attorney that owns Legacy Life Plan. Dalia, tell us about yourself and what you do.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Peggy. My name is Dalia Anise. I'm an estate planning attorney with Legacy Life Plan. I help keep families out of court and out of conflict. I would really love to support you and your family. Please get your estate plan done. I know talking about passing away is not the best topic, but it's going to come to all of us, unfortunately. And leaving your family unsupported while they're grieving and just having a mess on their hands is really difficult. And I see that so many times with families that come to me to help them. So I would love to have a conversation with you. I'm going to put in the chat my phone number. You can call my office and schedule a discovery call. It's a free call, and let's see if we're a good fit to work together. Again, Legacy Life Plan, and my name is Dalia Anise. Thank you, Peggy.
You're welcome. Absolutely. We all need to pay attention to that before it happens. Next, I want to introduce Terry Berkery. Terry is fairly new with Allenek Railings, but not new to the industry. Terry, tell us about yourself and what does Allenek do?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Peggy. Can you guys all hear me and see me okay? Great. My name is Terry Berkery. I just recently joined Allenek Metals in Palm Springs after a very, very long background in the metal industry in various parts of the country. I've joined the company as sales manager, and the focus is new business development. So Elenac is a provider of very high-end railing systems, there's an array of systems that we offer, as well as enclosures for balconies and patios and even full pool enclosures. And then in addition, we have manufacturing and fabrication capabilities for offering a full array of architectural aluminum fabrication. My focus with the company as sales manager is new business development. We work with HOAs, we work with GCs of various sorts, engineering firms, architectural firms, primarily as it relates to restoration. Elenac has been around for 15 years. We are recently under new ownership and in a very, very strong strategic growth mode. And so my job is to network. And Peggy, thank you again for having me on. This is going to be a great platform for that. I can be reached, folks, at you can reach me through our website at alenac.com. That's ALNAC.com. And my email address is tb@alenac.com. Thank you all so much. I look forward to getting to know everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And that update as new ownership. You can put that information, and all the sponsors can as well, into the chat box for the group to take a look at. But I will be sending out a sponsor sheet, which will have everyone's name and contact information on it following today. Let me mention the few sponsors that are not on today and give you a quick snapshot of what they do. We've got Munyon Painting. Munyon is very big across the entire state. They have offices East Coast, West Coast, so feel free to reach out to Shelley Rovner over here on the East Coast and Shawnee Haas over on the West Coast. We also have City Quiet Windows and Doors as a sponsor. They have been a longtime sponsor, and he has 4 offices around the state. Ben Friedman is your contact, and he is the president, so he's hands-on and will give you a great price and a great product and installation. We also have Southwest Elevators on. They are 2 offices now, one on the East Coast down in Fort Lauderdale, and the other one they opened up in Tampa the last year. That's going pretty well for them. The contact there is Brooke or Brandy Cavender. We also have Clarkson and Varick. Clarkson and Varick is a elevator consulting company. So sometimes after you have your elevator in, you're not quite sure what to do or what the repair would be. Call them in to get an overview on a consulting basis versus just an elevator company coming in and wanting to change everything out. There might be a cost savings there, and it's well worth the money spent to have a consultant take a look at it before you make any other expenses to repair. We also have PD Concrete. PD Concrete is a longtime sponsor for me. They are based out of West Palm Beach and also Aventura, so they're mostly East Coast company specializing in concrete restoration. The contact there is the owner, Daniel Pina. We also have the paving lady, Dawn Miller's the contact there. Dawn is available. She is traveling back and forth between Orlando now and also Boynton Beach area for the East Coast. So reach out to her on that sponsor sheet for any of your paving needs. Kaiser Air Conditioning is also a sponsor. They have 2 offices in the Palm Beach area, and they are 24/7, 365 days a year. So in Florida with air conditioning, such a necessity, of course, you want to have their number handy. That will be on the sponsor sheet. We have Velocity Services Group. Velocity is a large loss restoration company, and I wanted to have them as a panelist for you today, Jordan, but unfortunately, the representative for the state of Florida is out of the country. So if anybody has any questions, they do a free analysis of your property. They will actually do a drone, take pictures before the hurricanes hit, have your pictures ready to go for your insurance claims. And I'm sure Daniel's going to speak to that. So that's all I'm going to say. But Velocity Services Group, the contact there is Rick Hogan. We also have, last but not least, Hafer Company. Hafer is a full service CPA firm. Nicole Johnson is the contact. They also have several offices around the state of Florida. They do a full audit, and they can also do your full CPA work that you need. With that, I'm going to turn this over to our moderator today, Daniel Baum. Daniel is going to make an introduction here. I just want to say thank you again and look forward to the presentation.
Thanks, Peggy. Thank you to all of our sponsors. My name is Daniel Baum. I am the guy behind COA Solutions of Florida, the founder of COA Solutions. We specialize exclusively in the insurance for condominiums, HOAs, and multifamily communities here in Florida. So when we talk about hurricane preparedness today, roof vulnerabilities, storm readiness, warranty limitations, those are the exact conversations I'm having with associations every day on the insurance side. What makes a roof properly maintained or hurricane hardened directly impacts whether a claim may get paid, what the coverage terms might be on renewals, the carrier requirements, and how association is positioned at the time of renewal. My company, COA Solutions, helps communities understand that connection and make sure that the insurance program actually reflects the conditions and the risk of the property. I also want to just say that I fully support Peggy and our Condo Zone program. I genuinely believe that education is the most valuable thing we can offer in this industry. So thank you for being here, and let's get started. I want to start by introducing our panelists today. First, Jordan Litt from Best Roofing, who will be doing our presentation. He's the Vice President of Sales at Best Roofing, and what makes Jordan particularly valuable in a conversation like this is that he didn't just start in sales. He came up through the field. He's worked as a site supervisor, construction manager, and spent years as a forensic roof specialist, which means he's the person you call after a storm to figure out exactly what failed and why. That forensic background is genuinely rare. Most people talk about hurricane preparedness in general terms. Jordan can tell you specifically what a roof's vulnerabilities look like before a storm arrives and what the warranty implications are when something goes wrong after one. He represents Best Roofing, which has been serving South Florida's commercial, industrial, and multifamily communities since 1978. So this is a company that's been through every major storm cycle that this state has seen. Jordan, great to have you as our presenter.
Thank you very much for, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, by all means.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Our second presenter or panelist is Jayme Gelfand of First Citizens Bank. And Jayme's background is one of those that really makes you understand why credentials matter. She holds the PCAM, the Professional Community Association Manager designation from CAI, which is the highest professional certification in our industry. But what's notable is that she's not a manager, she's a banker. And the reason she has that designation is because she spent over 25 years immersed in the community association world. Prior to her current role, Jayme served as Senior VP at Truist Financial, where she oversaw association services relationships for more than 9,000 community associations. She's also a licensed real estate broker, has served as executive director of the CAI Gold Coast chapter, and has been recognized as an expert witness in community association litigation. She now serves as regional sales officer at First Citizens Bank, where she works specifically with associations on their treasury, lending, and reserve needs. So welcome, Jayme.
Thanks, Daniel. Looking forward to today's class. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jordan. Just one reiteration of what we've already said, and this just kind of gets lost for everyone. So just one more time. Questions, please put them in the Q&A, not the chat. It's very difficult to monitor the chat as we can't go back and forth in it, but the Q&A we will be looking at. Jordan will be taking questions, I should say Jordan and Jayme will be taking questions throughout the presentation if it's on topic. And if we don't get to it during the presentation, we will certainly get to it at the end or thereafter. So with that said, Jordan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that beautiful introduction there. Today's class that we're going to be going through today is hurricane preparedness. And, it says here, is your roof hurricane ready? And I think that we should kind of make a little correction there and say, is your property hurricane ready? Because not only is it so important to make sure that one of the largest assets on your building is prepared and taken care of, but to make sure that you have all of your documents and insurance and items like that, and someone even like Jayme on the banking side that you can turn to if that's required. So not only is it so important to have your roof hurricane ready, but have your property and your community protected and prepared for what could come, as we know down here in South Florida and all over the state, to be prepared come this time of year. So my name is Jordan Litt. I'm the Vice President of Sales here at Best Roofing. Here's a little bit of the agenda that we're going to go through today. And you can see there in today's class, and Daniel kind of touched on it, it's all about education. And I always say this in a lot of my different classes, and an educated consumer is a better consumer. And so if we can, educate everyone, especially in areas that this information is so pertinent, that they're going to be better prepared, and hopefully it's gonna save a lot of heartbreak and dollars down the road as well. So the roof over your head, when we talk about some of the most basic necessities that we all have, and one of those, besides your food and water, right, is shelter. And the roof is really what protects your house, your townhouse, condo, warehouse, building, all of that is protected by the roof. And that's why it's such a critical component of your building structure, and something that you need to make sure that you're taking care of. And there's really two different types of basic roof components that we need to identify so that we can discuss a little bit further. And that's what kind of roof system it is, and whether it's a steep slope or a pitched roof, things that would be considered, tile, metal, shingle, which are going to be mostly your single family homes, townhomes, certain condos, stuff like that. And then your low slope or your flat roofs, which you see there on the left as well, which can also technically encompass a single family home or condo like that. So on the steep slope side down here, especially in South Florida, this is kind of the land of tile. We see a lot of that shingle, metal as well. And then on the low slope side, a lot of single ply options, which would be your TPO, PVC, or KEE, modified bitumen, which is going to be your multi-plied asphalt-based products, and your built-up roof systems as well. I always throw this in here too, because as we know, these high wind events that are going to occur in this area, and this just gives you a different idea that not every roof is kind of built or constructed equally. And there's a lot of different ways that a storm can affect a structure. And this alone shows you just a couple different ways, even for a single family home per se, of just the different type of roofing structures that exist, even in this, let alone the different complexities of a flat roof system, a cooling tower, AC units on the roof, things of that nature. So it's always something to consider. So let's talk about understanding the risks. This shows you here, and last year I'd have to say last year was a fairly light year for us. And this is kind of the time of year where the fodder starts and when they start talking about hurricane season and getting prepared. And now is the perfect time, as we all know. June 1st is the beginning of the season. And so they always kind of come out with these projections. And I've been seeing some of these articles recently stating, that Fort Lauderdale, South Florida, Tampa, how long it's been since there's been a direct hit and we're due. And they come out with these projections every year as far as how many named storms, how many hurricanes, what's considered a major hurricane, how many we can expect, and then direct U.S. impacts, right? So here you can kind of see what the average is, that historical data over that 30-year period last year, and then now what is forecasted for this year. So it looks to be about typical as we've seen in the past, but we know it just takes one. So the Saffir-Simpson categories, you can see here, this is something that gets talked about quite often. And these are the different strength categories that you're going to see and how they're going to categorize these storms when it comes to, and it's mostly based off wind mile per hours, right? A lot of it also, and kind of I think the more dangerous side of it for sure, is how much storm surge is going to come into play with some of these storms, and understanding that not only from a building perspective, but specifically a roof, that it doesn't always need to be the wind shear or something like that that's actually going to cause the issues. And it can be a lot of the storm surge, which causes a lot of the devastation, which you'll see here later. But you can see category 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and the different miles per hour associated with that. But that storm surge is really where you're going to start to see some of the devastation and just the amount of billions of dollars in infrastructure damage that can do over the course of a storm, right? This I always find interesting, and I think we had a little scare. I think it was last year, very early on. But what you're typically going to see is really as we start getting into those August months, August, September, October, is really when it starts to literally heat up as far as when we're going to see a rise in some of those named storms and some of those risks of obviously them coming our way. But you don't see a lot of it early on. And I think part of this is also due to the weather and the warming of the waters, right? And as it creates this kind of perfect storm, if you will, of all the air moving over from Africa and also from the Caribbean. And that's really when you get into the danger zone. And I always kind of put it as like, that Labor Day weekend, it always seems to kind of get ruined with some storms coming before or after. And one thing to always consider is, and one thing we have to consider down here in South Florida quite often is just our travel plans, because the last thing you'd want is to not be around and be able to secure the property and prepare accordingly when those times of years come around, because this is kind of when you're going to see, based on the chart here, the most opportunities for these storms to actually be present. So here's just a couple of storms, and just you can see some of the devastation from the overviews, but also based on the damage that occurs, how many billions of dollars of infrastructure this actually affected. So Wilma, this is actually, I think, one of the last ones that you could say really affected the area down here. I know we had a scare in 2017 with Irma, but this is, and we're seeing this a lot now, and it's coming back because a lot of the roofs that are currently being replaced now, the last time they were replaced were because of Hurricane Wilma in 2005, 2006, and up through 2007, after some of the claims were actually completed. So what you're seeing is a lot of other storms too, and this is Andrew. So this is the one that really changed. It really changed the game down here in South Florida, and what they realized through the building codes and the NOAs, which we always talk about. Through all this devastation came something. Something came out of that, and that is these notice of acceptances, and those are basically determined already in the lab with pre-built systems saying that if you do this in this order, it's an acceptable system, and running everything through that channel to make sure that everything that you're building is up to the codes required to handle some of these windstorms and negative uplift pressures that are required. So we live in one of the most code restricted and stringent areas of the entire country. Most of that came about because of what happened during Hurricane Andrew. So although there was a lot of destruction and it kind of flattened Homestead and the surrounding areas, what came out of that is a way that we now build buildings that people from all over the country actually come down here to see and study the Miami-Dade County approval system, because it does make such a difference. So this was Hurricane Irma, and you see as we get to a more contemporary times and more recent history, some of these numbers continue to elevate, and that also is because so many people have kind of moved into these areas, and the infrastructure has been built even more up in some of these areas, especially around here. I mean, I was driving through Miami last week, and I counted 13 cranes alone just in the downtown area, surrounding where I was. And then you see something like this was Michael, which was obviously up kind of in the Panhandle, but something like Hurricane Ian, right on the west coast of Florida, very developed area, $113 billion. and what that did to the West Coast over there. And there's actually a very interesting picture that you can find probably online of what the difference in these more updated codes and what they have done. And there's a picture there of basically everything on the beach flattened, and the only standing building was something that had been built in the last couple years to the most updated codes. So they really do make a difference, and they really do matter in helping, get through some of those storms. So just some vernacular in relation to storm terms. You have the advisory. Look, take this stuff seriously, because it really does come into play. And I know that there's a lot of over coverage and stuff like that, but it's all coming from a place of making sure that we're keeping the public informed. So if you get into a hurricane or tropical storm watch, that's saying that specific area, it's possible that within the next 48 hours that you're going to see some of those high wind events or the rain that comes with that and storm surge. And when you get into that warning, that's saying, look, guys, you got 36 hours. It's most likely going to be in this area locally to where you're located. Make sure that you have a plan in place and start executing on that plan. Tropical depression, that's typically going to be a storm where the wind is under 38, 39 miles per hour, because once you get into that 39 up to about 74 miles per hour, that's a tropical storm, right? And I'll tell you, living in the Fort Lauderdale area, even a couple years ago, I think it was Tropical Storm Eta, maybe in 22, something like that, but it dumped nearly 27 inches of rain over the course of 2 or 3 days. And that alone flooded the neighborhoods in and around my house. And so tropical storms can do a lot of damage as well. So please make sure that you also have a plan that you can put into place, even if one of those are coming through. And then, of course, anything over that 74 mile per hour threshold, now you start getting into the category 1 of hurricanes. Storm surge, like I'd mentioned before, this is where that water, based on that wind, is going to get pushed inland. And understanding how close you are to those bodies of water and how they can affect you is certainly something you want to take into account. And Daniel, that might be something you can talk about. And I know there's been a lot of talk with these updated SEERS studies that are happening and everything like that, and how close you are to the coast and what those requirements are, from an insurance perspective. But I'm sure it's going to kind of change what the coverages may be based on your proximity to water. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. There are carriers out there who won't touch anything on barrier islands. There are carriers the underwriting process and the amount of premium you pay is certainly going to take into consideration your distance from tidal water. That's 100% part of the underwriting process.
Absolutely. And it's just something that I think, especially in this location, it's something that you'll have to consider on the front end, because there could be unintended consequences of moving into a building or a property within that close proximity. So this is all information that needs to be taken into account and things that need to be considered, right? So, is your roof hurricane ready? I am a big proponent of a comprehensive roof audit. It's something that we offer, and it's something that I recommend to anyone that's saying, hey, Jordan, can you come out and just take a look at it? When should I do this? I say, look, we should do it twice a year at minimum, and that should be sometime coming out of the winter time into spring, which is basically going to allow us to come to your building and assess prior to the hurricane season starting, but also give you time to assess the report that we've provided and give you time to essentially decide if that's something you want to do. The next time that we should be coming out to your roof should be towards the end or at the end of hurricane season. How did these repairs hold up? What is the current state of your roof after repairs were made or after some of these events occurred? So diagnosing to make sure that we can stop any of those issues that have come up based on any events that occurred is also important, because we don't want any of those to go undiagnosed or untreated until the next time that an inspection occurs. So it's very important to make sure that we're doing a pre-storm inspection and that you're documenting that and it's occurring every year. So what to inspect on the roof? So when we're doing a comprehensive roof audit, typically we're going to look at every component of the roof and then bring to you any issues that we're seeing, and we have a great format that you can see photos and kind of break everything down for you. But the perimeter flashing conditions are a big one, which we'll talk about here in a minute shortly. Any loose debris on that roof, right? So for one, we got to be very careful because any debris can actually cause any of the drainage to clog, right? And actually back water up onto that roof, which could create a catastrophic issue if there's enough rain, right? Also, we want to make sure that any of that debris is removed so that it doesn't become a projectile and cause further damage on the roof or to surrounding properties as well. We also want to take a look at all of your rooftop equipment. There's a myriad of different examples all over South Florida, and you can take a look at them on the roofs of different kind of logistical setups with air conditioning units, whether there's stands on the roof. Certain apartment complexes might have, 400 ACs on the roof, right? There's cooling towers. There's other equipment that's up there on the roof that has to be addressed and make sure that it's properly secured. The roof drainage, as I mentioned before, depending on the structure that you have and the type of buildings that there are, making sure that those are free and clear of any debris, making sure that you get positive drainage. The name of the game is to get that water off the roof and away from your building as quickly as possible. If you have certain type of deck systems like a wood deck, gypsum, tectum, if you do have a backup of drainage on that roof, you could potentially collapse that building in. So making sure that those are free and clear so that you do have positive drainage is paramount this time of year, because we do get a substantial amount of rainfall in a very short period of time down here in South Florida. Open seams, laps, and penetrations. This is the easy layup stuff that these preventative maintenance programs and inspections can nip in the bud right away, because even a simple puncture on a roof can allow anywhere up to 10 gallons or more per hour. And if there's multiple of those on a roof system, you're just inviting that active water intrusion into the roof. And then that can cause a myriad of issues from there, because maybe it might not show up in the unit below, but if it's entered into the roof system, it's going to start depreciating that from the inside out at an exponential rate. So it's something that seems very basic, but can cause major issues if it's not addressed as soon as possible. So this is an example of one of the comprehensive roof audits that we provide, just so that you can kind of see. And then on the left side, you'll see there a core sample that I took on the roof, me measuring so that I could actually show you the existing composition of what's there. And then some photos below that, some observational photos of some deficiencies that I found. On the right side, you'll actually see the report that we put together. So what the issue is, the quantity that we found, why it's a deficiency, how we plan to repair it, a cost associated with that, and then a highlighted photo in that top right corner of generally where those issues are found. And so what this does is this breaks down for the layman and board members in an easily digestible way for them to understand what we're finding up on their roof and why it's a problem and what it would cost to actually make those repairs. Okay. So, and here's another example of some pre-damage assessments and stuff like that, right? From an overview perspective. And this is what I was kind of referencing a little bit earlier. The first place that a roof is going to fail is that corner, and you see there highlighted the 4 different corners. That's the first place that is going to fail. And during a roof installation, those are also consequentially the areas that we need to reinforce the most, right? So when we go in for putting or designing a roof system together, we are going to make sure that we have the most, reinforcement in your corners. And then from there, the perimeter. And then lastly, the field of the roof, which is kind of the middle area. And you can see there, it's what we call a picture frame of the rolls actually going in a different direction to make sure that we've extrapolated out from those corners to the perimeter of fortifying that with either additional fasteners or additional foam. All of that's going to be dictated based on the deck and the attachment of the system. But every time that you're going to see a roof fail, the first location that it's going to fail is going to be in the corner. And here's a perfect example why. I love this photo in the bottom right corner, because it's such a perfect illustration for why that corner is typically, or perimeter is going to be the first place that actually fails. So what you have is you have wind coming across the top, as you can see, blowing across the top of the roof. You're also going to have that wind that's going to be hitting the wall or side of the building and then moving upwards. What that does is create a cycle, right? And what that does is it's going to create what's called a negative pressure. So roofs don't blow off. What they do is they get sucked upwards from the negative pressure that is building from the top side of the roof. And then, of course, if you have other parts of your building that become compromised, doors, windows like that, what the wind can then do is get inside and push from the underside, which is what we call positive pressure. But that negative pressure design is part of the NOA system and the assemblies that are already determined to be approved by the Miami-Dade County approval system. And those are what we're using. And this is what everything is based off of. What negative pressure can that system design handle in the event of a high wind event? So rooftop equipment, like I mentioned, this is all stuff. And another thing I would caution is if you are doing any of these projects on the roof during this time of year, make sure that the companies that you're working with have a hurricane plan in place, because they all should be prepared. We don't just stop working 6 months out of the year because there's the possibility of a hurricane down here in South Florida. It's something that every company should account for and should be prepared for and should be presenting to you, especially if they believe that your project will occur during this time of year. So please make sure if you're in the presentation phase or the negotiation phase, that's something that you are asking any of the contractors that you're working with. And that should also apply to even companies outside of the roof that may be also utilizing the roof as a staging area. If they're doing any swing stage work, scaffolding work, anyone that you're going to be dealing with during this time of year should be presenting this plan to you as well. So roof attachment, we talked about this a little bit, but depending on everything is dictated by the deck, right? So what type of deck you have is going to dictate the form of attachment of that roof system to that deck, right? And so whether you have something like a concrete deck, a gypsum deck, a tectum deck, those are all going to be fully adhered using a low-rise foam or a bonding adhesive, something of that nature. Whereas if you have a steel deck with lightweight concrete over it, or a steel deck or a wood deck, you're going to have a mechanical attachment, right? So understanding the attachment and how all that plays into, I can tell you just from building roofs and understanding what the negative pressures associated with them, the strongest roof system typically that is going to be installed is going to be over a concrete deck with a fleece back system directly to that concrete. Now, that can't always be an option based on especially the codes that occur and the R value and what you're taking off versus what you're putting back. But a fully adhered system, typically where you're going to utilize that low-rise foam and that bonding adhesive, is going to give you a higher negative uplift ratio compared to any mechanical attachment system out there. So roof drainage, as we mentioned, making sure that these are free and clear of debris is paramount, making sure that not only these photos both show you what an interior primary drain example would be. Another thing that you want to have checked, and what we would do during our comprehensive roof audit, is if you do have exterior scuppers, an area that is certainly a point of concern would be how well those scuppers on the exterior side of the building are sealed and maintained. And that's something that we would look at for you. But wind-driven rain can get water to actually intrude through that system and actually go down in through the concrete, but also allow water to get into the roof system as well. So it's definitely something you want to consider. The open seams and penetrations, once again, one of the easiest locations for water to gain entry through the open laps, but your penetrations. So depending on when that roof was installed and the technology utilized at that time of installation, you could have more maintenance required upkeep that is really something that needs to be looked at on a yearly basis, more than other type of roof systems. There's been advancements in certain types of technology related to certain type of roof systems that are going to remove a lot of these issues from some of these newer roof assemblies that are installed. But that doesn't mean, especially if you have an older one, that you're not going to have additional points of vulnerability. So it's something you want to make sure that you're having inspected and addressed prior to rainy season, hurricane season, and especially that you're having checked after so that you can see whether there were any effects from the season, of course. And then here you go. This is the end of like what our audit would look like here. And you have here kind of a condition summary. So we're going to use our in-house proprietary kind of grading system that we use to give you basically a grade, an A, B, D, an A, B, C, D, or F grade. Any repairs that we found that we would recommend, there'll be a emergency versus remedial. Emergency, hey, you need to do this. It's going to leak if not addressed. Remedial is if you have the ability to address this now, we would certainly recommend that. And then give you a general square footage price of what a replacement might cost down the road so that you guys can prepare, whether it's through your SIRS or whether it's through just wanting to plan in advance of what would, become a full roof replacement. Now you have some numbers, and if you're even out a couple years, you can start preparing financially for what it's going to cost if that roof does come for replacement. So, and here is the example of what I was talking about with our proprietary system. For us, anything that still has 15 years or more on it, we consider an A. B is 10 to 14. A C is 5 to 9. D is really that last kind of, we call it the window of restorability, where you have anywhere from 2 to maybe 4 years left, and probably the last vestiges of an opportunity for you to really make a change to extend the existing life of that roof. Daniel, I'd also bring you back in here because this is where I believe it's very important to, at this point, start to have a dialogue with your carrier or with the insurance company to say, hey, we're considering doing something like this. We're gonna spend some money on it. Is this gonna help? Is this gonna hurt? Is this something that you guys are willing to accept so that there's documentation that this could extend the life? And this is something that I, even in the class I was teaching yesterday, I always say, have a dialogue with your carrier because you want to understand what the repercussions of this installation would be.
Yeah, and what I would say is it's very carrier dependent. If you remember in the 2021, 2022, when we were all running to Citizens because nobody else would write wind coverage, they were pretty extreme in what they would or wouldn't accept. In fact, I would say Citizens is the most extreme. For example, what would you say is like the life of a flat roof? Like if I put you on the spot, Jordan, and said, put a flat roof on, what is the life expectancy of a flat roof?
Almost all the systems that we are proposing nowadays from a manufacturer standpoint are going to do some form of a 20-year system.
Okay. And when you went to Citizens looking to get wind coverage, they would say 15 years. If your roof is older than 15 years, we won't insure it. There was a workaround. We could get Jordan up there. We could get an inspector up there to basically tell us, okay, it still had 5 years left, and Citizens might give us another 1, maybe 2 years of coverage. That was during the most extreme of times. The market has shifted dramatically over the last 2 years to being a lot less rigorous about roof age. Roof condition, still important. Roof age, less so. But again, very much carrier specific in what they're looking for. I think the competition amongst the property carriers has forced them to be a little bit more lenient in this respect, but they still very much are paying attention to it. Part of it also is going to be, of course, how tall your building is. That's going to play a major component of that because the winds get stronger as you go higher in altitude, and therefore the effects on the roof are going to be greater. So a lot goes into it. Having a conversation in advance, if you haven't had a conversation with your agent or you want to have a conversation with your agent, I strongly recommend you start to do that. Even the year before that you're considering changing the roof or putting a new roof on, because it obviously takes time to go through that process. You want to understand how the insurance company is going to look at it. And the other component I want to just say that, Jordan, you could probably touch on a lot more than I can, is the difference between replacing a roof and putting another layer on a roof, or putting some type of a foam or a barrier system on top of an existing roof. This, again, was a major issue when we were in the Citizens world, because Citizens wasn't accepting layers on top of existing roofs. And so we were having clients being rejected when they thought they had a brand new roof that was installed. So again, it's market specific. If we don't have a major hurricane this year that creates major damage, the competition amongst the carriers is going to get even more intense, which is going to, again, drive down premiums, and it's going to increase their risk exposure to allowing older roofs to be covered. But it only takes one big storm before premiums can shoot right back up and the restriction on roofs can tighten overnight.
So great answer, and there's so much good stuff to unpack in relation to that, because all the stuff you're talking about is stuff that I've dealt with over the last couple of years, and what I've always used as an example for the insurance side of things is it's a pendulum, right? So it swung very conservative a couple years ago, 20, 21, 22, and I'd filled out these Citizens reports a few times, maybe a dozen times before that, to the point where I was filling out a dozen per month. And what we were seeing was issuances or notice of cancellations coming. And what we had to do, and it's so great that you said it, is it's not strictly based on roof age anymore, but so much based on roof condition. Because what we were seeing was this permit was pulled at X year, and it's been that many years since, so you have to replace now. Taking it not into consideration what that existing roof system and the quality of how well it's been maintained and how well it's still performing out of the equation, which I always felt was unfair. But when you talk about at different times with different amounts of leverage that they can do this with the competition in the industry, we've gotten to a point where I think the pendulum has come back towards the middle a little bit, as you alluded to. But I've come with probably mixed success where we did exactly that. And what we did is we went out, we did inspections, we provided a report. They did the repairs. We showed the documentation of the repairs being made. They then took that back to the insurance carrier. We're able to show them, this is what they found. This is what we did. Here's the repairs being completed. And in certain cases, they were able to give them an additional year, and they kind of punted and said, let's talk about it again next year. Let's see how things are looking, and maybe we'll consider or be able to still do the coverage. So we're seeing certainly it loosen a little bit, but it's still, pre-2020, we're not there yet, I would say, as far as what I've seen, but they have relaxed it a little bit, but it's still very conservative compared to what I remember it being early on. And so that's why the documentation is so important.
And I just want to add to that. Remember, these things take time, especially, May 31 is fast approaching. It's between May 31 and December 31 are the two most intense dates on the calendar for insurance renewals. I have probably 24 clients stacked up, if not more, for May 31. And that doesn't include everybody else in the month of May. That's just May 31. So, and the underwriters, if I, as an independent agent, have 24 of them stacked up, you can imagine that the bigger firms have possibly hundreds of communities stacked up at these dates. And that means the underwriters may have thousands of communities stacked up at these dates. And everyone's asking for premium proposals all at the same time, and everyone's asking for approval all at the same time. And it takes time. When we put in our applications and then they come back with issues, they want to see the documentation we're going to prepare. So to Jordan's point from earlier, if you know that your roof is a little bit older and could be questioned, you'll want to speak to Jordan, maybe 2 months in advance even, or maybe Jordan, you'd suggest even earlier, to at least go up there and do the inspection and see what you're going to find. Because if you will need that documentation, it's going to be hard to get that document to the underwriter's hand within a couple of weeks, before your policy is going to expire in order for you to secure that coverage. And if you can't, you may be faced with having to go with a carrier who's offering you coverage, but at a significantly higher premium. So documentation, hugely important, but also being proactive and thinking about it at least, 2 or 3 months before your renewal, not just a week or two before your renewal.
Absolutely. And as time compresses towards that date of needing that information to be in, you can imagine the calls increase, the weather increases, which all slow down the response time of how quickly we can get out to do it. So yeah, being proactive, having that conversation at the beginning of the year after it's kind of turned into the new year, getting set up and getting scheduled for us to come out and do the assessment, give us enough time to get back out there and do the repairs so that we can provide the documentation that you can then submit with plenty of time for them to review and get you an answer is all very important. So understand that it's not all going to get done right within a Monday and everything's done by Friday and zippered up and sent over to you. So if you want to give yourself the best opportunity, make sure that you're prepared and that you're being proactive, and most likely it'll work out in your favor. But we've seen a lot of different instances of, and you spoke to this a few minutes ago about, a customer being sold something thinking that they were getting this, but they weren't, based on what the insurance was considering that. So a lot of those would be like the roof coatings or adding a new layer of material over the existing, which we consider to be a resurfacing. Now that isn't a new roof, right? It's not being pulled under a complete roof replacement permit, which is where they're typically going to go to look for that information. So it's just very important that you guys understand and that you have a qualified roof professional that you're speaking with as far as what it is that you're getting, and then reaffirm that with your carriers to make sure that if you plan on doing this, that it's something that they align with, to make sure that you're not left holding the bag and paying a contractor who got out of Dodge and you're not getting what you think you got. So it's very important to make sure that you're looking at all this stuff on the front end and before you make any large scale decisions. So
yeah, Jordan, the other thing I'd love to hear your insight into is, and this may sound silly, but in the age of drones, and the reason it comes to mind is because the image that we're looking at, if you look at the image in the upper right-hand corner of the building itself, and you see how what I would say black or dark the roof looks, these insurance carriers, they're not sending an inspector to your building to look at your roof before they underwrite. What they do is they may send a drone up to take a look. And if that drone shows images of a dark roof, I dare say they almost immediately say, oh, there's a problem with the roof, or the roof is old. And the roof may not be that old. It just might be, the environmental factors that made the dirt or the from where your building sits and what's fallen on the roof over the years. Do you guys recommend or, suggesting that people go up and power wash the tops of these roofs, if nothing else, so that the photos look better?
Look, I'm old school. I'm always going to tell you, let one of us get up on that roof and let us document that for you. I mean, yeah, if you can get up there and clean it, but once again, you want to make sure that you're cleaning it with the right types of materials, compatible chemicals, things like that. But let us get up there. I can think of a perfect example of what you're talking about, where we had put a roof on in 2021 and the carrier had gone out and didn't get on the roof, but actually had like an extension pole and put a camera on the top of the extension pole and walked around the perimeter of the building. There was some water because it had rained the day before around one of the drains, which they said was ponding water. This roof was not in suitable condition and needed to be replaced.
Yeah.
So the roof was 3 years old at the time, and we had put it on. So I went out there, I got on the roof, I did a full audit. The roof had structural slope, crickets in between, manipulating the water directly where it was supposed to go. The roof was proactively maintained, which we had documentation from every single year since the roof was installed. It was still in good standing with our warranty and from a manufacturer standpoint. And I presented all that to them, in an email with some sternly worded, a letter in there as well saying, you guys, you really, if you're going to try to cancel something like this or use the words that it's unsuitable after only 3 or 4 years, you really need to do the due diligence to explain why and show some evidence of that, because water can pond on a roof depending on the manufacturer anywhere from 48 hours to 72 hours after a storm anyways, and they're fine with that. And certain systems are more ponding water tolerant than others, but we did get a lot of situations even today where there's a discoloration or a stain on the back of someone's flat roof at their house, and the insurance carrier doesn't want to cover them simply because of what was installed there. So I always tell everyone, let us get up there and help you fight the good fight, and we'll do everything we can to document it for you. And we've had, pretty mixed success in actually being able to push back on some of that information. So I understand what they're doing, and if they do a thorough job, then it is what it is. But for anyone that's going to kind of cut the corners, I'm going to make sure that we don't, and that we give you the best chance possible. So
yeah, and I would just say to all the roofers out there, when you are asked to do a roof inspection report, if you do see that the roof is, in good condition, but has been blackened or darkened just because of environmental factors, you should definitely recommend to your communities to do a cleaning, if nothing else, just so that when you go to take the photos and deliver that report, that it shows the best possible, the condition, the roof in the best possible light. Because these people are doing armchair underwriting. They're literally looking at what we give them, and that's how they're making their decisions. And something as silly as a photograph, to your point, makes them say, oh, well, it's not suitable for our underwriting, when in your case, it was a 3-year-old roof.
Yep. Perfectly said. So roofs, windows, doors, as I talked about earlier, with that negative pressure, that wind uplift that wants to pull the roof up, what can happen is making sure, like we talked about, not only your roof, but make sure your structure is secure. Same concept here, because if a window or door does blow in, you're now going to allow all that wind to move in and then push up. So it's actually going to work the roof from both sides. And in most cases, if the windows and doors go, that's going to be game over for your roof. Now, you're going to be in just a bad, if not worse position if the roof goes as well. But it's going to be a situation where these other parts of the building are just as important to make sure that you're securing as well, right? Now, the biggest piece of advice that I can recommend when it comes to your roof specifically and being prepared is to make sure that you have a pre-existing relationship with a roofer or a roofing company prior to hurricane season, right? I can tell you from experience, and having been present for some of these hurricane seasons here, we are going to help our existing clients before we ever take on any new opportunities. And that is a commitment we've made to everyone that we work with. And so not only do you want to make sure that you have a relationship, but you have someone's number, but make sure it's not only saved in a phone where if power goes out and you can't charge a phone battery, that you could actually make sure you put a call into these people right away. I can tell you after 2017 with Irma, we were in a helicopter the next day that it was safe, and actually monitoring our jobs from the air, seeing what we needed to get to first and triage some of those buildings right away. So if you want the full power of a company's support, make sure that you have a relationship with them on the front end, because you need to have someone to call. As you can imagine, everyone is going to be making that call after a storm. So make sure you have a friend, make sure you know someone in the industry and someone that you can connect with and get in line, and make sure that we can come out there and try to temp it, or at least get you dry, do whatever we can. But you want to have a relationship with a roofing company to make sure that you are taken care of. And these are some of the steps, of course. Have a partner, do that pre-damage inspection or that pre-storm inspection, any proactive maintenance that can be done, making sure all the drains are nice and clear. And then, so important, and it's something that we really follow through with what we use called company cam, but my photos are going to have a specific timestamp on it. So not you can show them, look, this was done at this time on this date. And that's so important when it comes to documentation, because like Daniel was saying, every little piece of documentation matters, and the last thing that you would want would to be not be covered because of a technicality or a way that they will try to wiggle out. So make sure that you're protected and that you're covered with even the smallest details like that.
And Jordan, just to jump in here on the preparatory part of it, Peggy, myself, we've all done, Jayme, we've all done the hurricane preparedness webinars and seminars for a few years now, if not longer. And so that's where you want to be prepared with all the different vendors you need. Roofing, without question, is one of those. But also where I would want to turn to Jayme. Jayme, do you want to add anything on the financing side of it, of being prepared in advance, especially before the storm potential hits, or before storm season, from a financial standpoint, in case you need these resources? It takes a while to get an insurance payment.
It's important, like Jordan and Daniel have said, is to make sure that you're utilizing all of your business providers, that you have those lists, their phone numbers, their contacts, so that should a storm arise and you do need immediate financing for a roof replacement or a roof repair or landscaping movement, that all of that is thought about before the storm comes. So we start doing our hurricane prep classes now, May, so that boards and property managers understand how to put together a total plan. Landscaping, what happens if a storm comes, wind damage? Does landscape trees, are they covering the roadways where owners can't get out? How are you budgeting for all of these items? Do you have, when you did your 2026 budget, did you incorporate a financial plan for these types of items? It's not just a loan for a roof replacement down the road, but making sure that your budget incorporates any of these needs on an annual basis.
Yeah,
Just further to that point, Jayme, if from your standpoint, from the financial side, how far in advance would you say you meet with your clients to sort of get them lined up for maybe a line of credit or resources if they don't have the availability of funds?
So it's usually a loan process for any financial institution is usually a 30 to 45 day process once a package is received. So it's a good idea to start reaching out to your banker and discussing where are you on that Jordan's timeline of that roof stability. What does your roof look like if wind damage happens? We don't even have to have a hurricane. A tropical storm has sometimes as much wind damage. I've lived here 40 years and the word tornado never entered my vocabulary until the last couple of years. We've had tornadoes here that can do severe damage for roofs and properties.
And to your point there, Jayme, I would argue some of the most significant damage, wind-related damage from high wind events that occurred for some of our clients last year were actually not hurricane related, but were tornado related. So it's something that you have to be prepared for. Is there a certain point that you would recommend if a building knows that their roof is aging to start building a contingency plan for what they believe a budget would need to be and getting any type of pre-approval? Is there a certain threshold of years or anything like that that you would recommend?
Well, they absolutely should be following their SIRS plan that they've had to institute, knowing that they're funding that. I recognize that the government legislation has allowed them to use a line of credit towards the meeting of that requirement, but our perspective is cash in the bank is a much better perspective because you're otherwise draining your unit owners. If a good association starts to fund annually for their reserves for their roof replacement, they're starting to collect that necessary availability of funds. So at some point in the future, if they do have an instance, a tornado, wind damage, where the roof maybe was not projected to be replaced for 10 or 15 years, but something happened today, they do need to have some funds in their coffers to be able to work with that. Because as Daniel said, insurance claims can take a long time to process, but the association needs to get the work done. They need to have those funds or the ability to obtain financing to get the work done while they're waiting for that insurance claim.
It's such a great point that you're making too, because with the SIR study, and if you guys aren't familiar with Senate Bill 4D and the exposure to the HOA communities, make sure that you get up on that information. And like you said, if your roof is projected to be $1 million and you're 10 years out, you're going to need to be putting $100,000 away per year for the next 10. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to have an event where you might need to use some of that money beforehand. So making sure that you have contingencies in place, making sure that you have a relationship with a banker that where you can get that line of credit is super important, just based on the fact that we don't know what type of weather is going to come our way, and we need to be financially prepared to make decisions quickly, so that we can keep the building watertight and in good condition. So, okay, so and here we go, right, Daniel? What we were talking about. There's a lot of hidden or kind of misconceptions in relation to roof warranties, what is covered, what is not covered, and then to complicate things even further, what happens in the case of typically what is considered an act of God, which would be a hurricane and a named storm. So in most cases, your warranties from a manufacturer perspective are going to be invalidated if there is a named storm in your area. It's one thing to consider. The workmanship warranty in relation to how well that material was installed by the installer is something that I always recommend that you take to the negotiation table when a new roof is to be installed, and see, depending on, and then also to inquire, because there are two different forms of a warranty that you're going to get. You're going to get the manufacturer warranty, of which there are options there which need to be discussed on the front end, as far as whether that's a material only warranty or an NDL, which is a no dollar limit, which typically will include not only the material but the labor to repair those issues, and then your workmanship warranty, which is going to come from the installer. And understand with these types of storms what is covered and what is not, and that's something I recommend making sure that you're communicating with those individual companies to make sure that you understand where your exposure is as well. And so we always used to say the big print giveth, the little print taketh away, right? So make sure that you're reading through those contracts and you're understanding what is going to cause that act of God clause to kind of come into play and what doesn't. There you go. I didn't even know we had it in there. So what's not covered, right? Negligence, pre-existing conditions. This is why anytime you're going to have work done on or near the roof, anytime it gets to or before this hurricane and rainy season, why it's so important to document those pre-existing conditions, or document that there weren't pre-existing conditions that can then be documented and provided to the carrier after the fact. And so there's nothing better than working with clients before they're doing some concrete restoration, or where there's going to be a mobilization of a company up on the roof to do a pre-damage inspection report and document it. The day that company leaves, to let us come back and do a post-work examination of those locations. And then you can provide the documentation from before and after, and that puts it in a nice clean bow for you to provide that documentation. Same concept with your insurance carriers. Please make sure you're doing these. It gives you a leg to stand on. Whereas if you don't, you're not going to have that opportunity. Is that where you would agree, Daniel?
Pre-existing damage is the number one way insurance companies find to not pay you. If you've heard me on any of these classes, if you've heard Steve Mason, I love quoting him because he uses an expression, if a photo is worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 1,000,000. Document before the storm, document after the storm. You need to be able to prove that the property was not damaged before, but was damaged due to the storm, so that they can't use that pre-existing condition excuse to negate your claim and try to not pay you. I can't reiterate that point enough.
And just to think about if your building came into the position of needing to put a claim in, would the yearly maintenance and the documentation done by a company really be an outlandish expense if it protected the possibility of your building getting coverage versus not? And it's a very simple and basic math equation to say that a little money up front and documentation up front can save you $1,000,000 or more on the back end. And so it's absolutely worth any of that proactive maintenance, because I don't think, Daniel, a lot of these people are considering the possibility of that documentation kind of saving their tails in relation to a claim being made or not made after a storm comes into play.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm trying to remember, we did a webinar. It was quite a while ago. It was with Chris, an engineer. What's Chris's last name? Peggy, you might remember we did this webinar a while ago, and he actually financially documented it. And he said, for every $1 you spend upfront on preventative maintenance, you're going to save at least $5 in the cost of what it's going to be to fix it when you have a problem. What was Chris's last name?
Smythe.
Smythe, thank you.
Oh, Smythe Engineering.
Smythe, yeah. So Chris did a whole webinar on, well, this was a big part of that conversation, was the small money you spend on the preventative maintenance and how much it saves you when you actually run into the problem that you didn't deal with beforehand. It's not only a valid point, Jordan, it's also I think it's probably one of the most important things that a board member takes into consideration, not just in the spend, but how do we maintain this property so we don't have to spend more when we haven't done a good job of it. And to add insult to injury is, this doesn't just come to the roof. This is all aspects of maintaining a property. This is, the insurance companies love to find you. If you haven't, I'm sure you've all heard of a rec letter, right? You get your policy renewed each year, and each year they send out an inspector after the fact, and they come out and they send you a letter, and it says, you have to do these things or we're going to drop your insurance. And, if I were on a board, I'd be scratching my head saying, well, why didn't you tell me how to do these things before you wrote the insurance for me? And there is no answer to that. The answer is they want to make sure you're doing preventative maintenance. And if you're not, they're going to point it out to you while you're insured. And if you don't take steps to fix it, they're going to drop your policy midterm. So preventative maintenance is more than just protecting the individual components. There's a lot more that goes into it. And I couldn't recommend more spending those few dollars, whether it's in inspection, just knowing that your property is properly maintained, especially the roof structure, or spending a few dollars to make something stronger or more storm protected in advance.
Absolutely. And some of the items even not being considered is that proactive maintenance may stop water intrusion that now gets into units that displaces residents, all the interior repairs that are required there. So it can snowball into a lot more that's not really taken into consideration. And some of that can be solved on the front end before it ever becomes a problem. So when you're looking to hire a contractor, and I have this slide, I know most every single one of the classes that I teach, because it's so important to vet these people. And as you can imagine, post-storm, there becomes almost a saturation of people coming into the market, and they will be looking to take advantage of the situation, right? And so you always see the reports on TV of someone who took the money and ran and never made sure that the repairs got done. And so vet your contractors, make sure that you visit their place of business, or that you actually can confirm that they have a local location within the area. Make sure that they have a service department. I talked about this yesterday. Would you trust a company that only had the ability to replace your roof, but at no point after that could actually come mobilized to make any repairs and service you throughout the lifespan of that roof? I always say the relationship does not end when the roof is put on. That's actually when the relationship starts. And so it's very important to make sure that you know that they have a dedicated service department. Obviously, checking any of their license and references as well. Make sure that you understand that they are in a good standing locally. Make sure, and this is from a liability perspective, and really for infrastructure, but make sure they have their own equipment. You don't want to have a roofing company where they're renting or subcontracting a dumpster and a crane and all these different people. You want to see that a company knows how to take care of every aspect of the roof when it comes to getting all the material up and down, making sure that they can get all the waste removed from the building in an efficient manner. Be skeptical of cheap, of course. You know how it works down here in South Florida. Make sure that you're doing some price comparison. You understand that the scopes of work are apples to apples. I would say if you are unsure or want to put the liability in someone's hands that you can trust, someone like Shaban from United or from Universal, and making sure that you're bringing an engineer in to write a specification to make sure that everyone is following the same scope of work is so important as well. And then make sure that you've seen their insurance documentation, right? And that they have the proper coverages to even execute the work that you're asking them to do. So here you can kind of see what I was mentioning. We have our own cranes. We have our own dumpsters. This is a video of our service department and the fleet that we have. We also have lulls, flatbeds, everything that we need to handle 99% of the properties out there, we can do with what we have ourselves. And so this is more of in relation to making sure, and this is the time of year. I don't wait for the storm to bear down on the house to be the guy online at Home Depot getting the sheets of plywood, right, when they're $800 a sheet. Just like the maintenance that we were talking about, be proactive. Assume that a storm is coming. Do you have your documentations within your house in a safe space? Do you have a plan with your family, or if you're a property manager, for your residents, that they know if something is going to occur, how to get out of the building and where they need to go or where they plan to personally go? Making sure that you have, like a waterproof safe or something that you can put all the documentation in, but not only to have that physical paperwork somewhere, but backed up digitally in multiple locations, so that if for whatever reason you do need to vacate the premises with enough time, that you have all that and can remove it from the facility and make sure that it is protected. This is one of the most important steps in making sure that, the water, the flashlights, but build a kit. Make sure that you have this stuff and that you're prepared. Every, April or May, I'll go to Costco and I'll make sure I have, 1 gallon of water per person per day, making sure that you have all the things that you might need if you are going to, as we say, hunker down in the area. But that might be your primary plan. Make sure you have a backup plan for yourself, the individuals, and the residents that you might be responsible for, that if it does get to a certain point that you can't stay and there is a mandatory evacuation, and what you're going to be able to do. And part of that is just preparing ahead of time and staying informed with where things are going. I think it was Dorian a couple years ago, if you remember. I believe it got from a category 1 to a category 4 very, very quickly. But it moved over the Bahamas. It looked like it was actually going to be a direct hit for us, as it was just 60, 70 miles off the coast there. And it sat right there over the Bahamas and then essentially went north, right? And it was a very, very close call. But it was one of those where we stayed. We wanted to see what was going to happen. And thankfully, it didn't actually continue westward because of some wind shear, which actually pushed it north. But it's another factor. And it's honestly something that I think is a more contemporary issue that I don't think enough people are talking about. And that is these storms, they are aggressively and rapidly moving from a tropical, depression to a storm to a category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 storm very, very quickly. And I don't remember that always being the case a decade or two ago, where I think even last year we were seeing some of these move from a category 1 to a category 4 in under 24 hours. And so that's why it's so paramount to have these plans in place, because things can change very quickly. Storms can change direction. They can change in severity. And making sure you have a plan in place means you don't have to start preparing for those, the eventuality that you're going to have to leave or get everything together. So make sure that you have everything ready, so that when something does turn on a dime, that you are prepared to take action. And here you go, putting your plan into action. And this is what we're talking about. So just make sure you have one, have a plan, share your plan, and then work your plan. That's something we've been talking about here, just when it comes to building roofs, forever. And so the same concept applies to making sure that you have everything ready. You've communicated that to everyone around you, and that you guys have the plan, and now it's time to work your plan. Oh, here we go. See, there you go. And that's what I have today. Thank you guys very much for your time. I know, were there any questions in the Q&A that we wanted to go through? Okay. Well, like I said, I have the QR code there. If you guys could leave a review, I very much appreciate your time today. And thank you very much for having me as well.
Yeah, Jordan, there was just one at the moment that came in. I didn't really see an opportunity to ask, and it's going to be a little bit more unique to the municipality. But Harry asks, how early before a hurricane would code compliance allow you to install shutters, and how long after the storm do you have to take them down? I'm not sure if that's your forte, but if you have any experience on it.
I can tell you this, we do permitting in over 90 different municipalities locally. They all kind of have a different way that they do things, right? I would love so much if it was uniform, but unfortunately it's not. So I would, and just like with some of the Senate Bill 2D and 4D that exist, from a statewide legislation standpoint, these are the rules of engagement. But what it also states in there is that any of your local municipality rules will supersede those, right? So what I'm basically getting around to saying is every municipality is going to probably hold their residents accountable in a different way. Some will probably be more lax. I've never seen any issues. Typically if people want to put them up in advance, we've gotten so used to the documentation of these storms as they come, but most people want to wait until they really know they need them to put them on. So I've never seen an issue on the front end. On the back end, I think, especially if there is a storm and it does, come in contact anywhere locally, they're going to give you some leeway when it comes to removing them. But that's going to be probably held by whatever the local municipality is.
Yeah.
It's also typically written in the declaration of the association. Guiding that. It's usually outlines that at a watch or a warning you can put them up, and they typically ask that you take them down between 5 and 10 days after. Obviously, that depends on the severity of the storm, but what they're trying to prevent is snowbirds who are gone for the summer season and just shutter up.
Yep.
Yeah, all right, that's it, guys. Thank you so much, Jordan. Fantastic job. Peggy, I guess let me turn it back over to you. I'm sure you want to tell our crowd about the in-person seminar we're going to be doing shortly.
Absolutely. So, yeah, scary pictures there, Jordan. Gee, ones I don't want to see on my house, that's for sure. But thank you so much. And thank you, panelists, for contributing and taking the time out. Thank you, audience, again for joining our webinars. We know you have a choice, and I'm trying to do one a week on various topics. Yes, we do have a couple things coming up. On May 12th, I want to mention the Paving Lady Company is going to be offering their class for anything for paving. I'll be sending out a flyer on that. On May 15th, I have another construction summit coming up. If anybody's under construction, wants to hear from attorneys and engineers about this, be sure and watch for that flyer. But on the following week, on May 19th, Daniel and I have put together the Hurricane Huddle. It's an expo and a conference, and we have two panels with that. We're saying huddle up and hunker down. Let's get some information one-on-one. It's in the Palm Beach County area. It's going to be held at the Hilton, Palm Beach International Airport. Starts at 9 a.m. and ends at 3 p.m. We're going to have a panel of board members, so I hope a lot of board members show up and bring your questions and so on. The board members are going to be able to discuss from 11:30 to 12 anything that you want to bring up regarding board issues or concerns. It doesn't have to be related to hurricanes, but we'd like to hear some information coming from there. We do have two board presidents lined up right now. We have the president from Villaggio, and we also have the president coming in from a Century Village. That is going to be monitored by Jane Boland, an attorney. Now, she has a lot of experience with property management, and also she's been an attorney for over 10 years, very active in CAI. So please join us if you can. I've got a keynote speaker coming in who's got a background in hurricane preparedness as well, and he will be speaking from 12 to about 12:30, 1 o'clock on a free lunch. So don't miss the free lunch. We got door prizes. Jayme and Daniel are both going to be on the panel along with Jordan. So we got a panel coming from 1 to 2 after lunch. So a nice group of panels with lots of information. I also have on May 29th, I have Dan Wasserstein. He's an attorney that's going to be talking about fining. We've had a lot of questions come in about that. So that's something, if you're a new board member, you especially want to chime in on, because there's some technical things about that that you need to know about fining. Lastly, I just want to promote, it's a little bit out, but on June 16th, CAI Gold Coast is having a day of education. I really like to see more board members participate in something like this, but it's a whole day. Again, lunch, it's sponsored and so on. Look for the flyer on that, and I'll try to get that out on my network as well. But thank you so much again, and I'll let it go for now, and hopefully I'll see you on May 12th at the Paving Ladies presentation. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.